Welcome to the Default Profitable Podcast. You're listening to the next episode. Today, we're going to focus on what it takes to start, run, and grow a business in the trades. We'll be talking about some successes, some failures, and some real stories from a business owner. I'm your host, Matt Nettleton, and today my guest is Danielle Wernert. Danielle, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Well, we've not really met. We had a brief conversation when you first logged on, but why don't we take a minute or two, introduce yourself, and then introduce what it is you do.
Yeah, definitely. So my name is Danielle Wernert, and I have been in the trades for a little over 5 years now. I actually started with a local, very, very large home service company here in Indy and started as an executive assistant. And one day, my boss came to me and was like, hey, I want to start a school. So let's do that. And that's kind of what raveled into my learning and development career. So while I went to school for exercise science, I did not go to school for the trades. So I've learned a lot along the way and eventually opened our own internal trade school. We were welcoming in thousands of applicants every single year and getting people into the trades that may not have previously had the opportunity, due to finances or life or things like that. So eventually decided that things had been slowing down a little bit. We're in a very weird hiring time right now. And so I decided I wanted to go out on my own and start Upskilled Consulting, where I get to help other companies that maybe are where we were, years ago. And, I know that training is important. I just don't know how to get it started for my team. So thus Upskilled Consulting was born.
All right. So what drove your boss to go to you and say, hey, we're going to start a school. You're going to be in charge.
Yeah. I don't know why he picked me, but I'm very thankful that he did. I'm very grateful for that experience. He had always kind of mentioned this idea of wanting to start a school. And in our industry, it's electrical, it's plumbing, it's HVAC. There are less and less applicants out there. More people are retiring in that industry. And so getting people into that industry has been very difficult. So now there's like this hyper focus of bringing people into the trades, getting trades to the next generations. And the reality was we were growing at such a rapid rate that the candidate pool out there wasn't going to be able to fulfill the needs that we had at the time. And so we thought the best way to handle that obstacle was to create from within. So, bring somebody in who had no prior experience and say, hey, we're going to teach you everything you need to know to be successful. All you need to do is have the right attitude and the right mindset, and we'll get you where you need to go.
And so you had a bunch of people apply,
yes,
which is kind of weird because you would think if there's that much demand, other people would be doing it too.
Right. Yeah.
And so you got people spun up in the trade. I think your note said you had over 500 people go through the school.
Yes. Yeah. So over time, we've had 200 graduates. We've helped more than 500 technicians, some coming in, no experience whatsoever, some a little bit of experience, but then we kind of developed their continued education skills. So yeah, we've absolutely touched and reached out to more than 500 technicians in their development.
Okay. And so then you decided to step away from that and do the Upskilled Consulting. So tell me about why you started that business.
Yeah. So what I found was we were constantly having companies come from across the country, and they would come tour our location and they wanted to learn what we were doing for many different reasons. But a big piece of that draw was our academy and was our training program. And so I would sit and I would have these Zoom meetings or these in-person meetings where they were constantly asking questions of, well, how do we do that? We love this idea. How did you start? What did you do? What would you recommend in this environment, kind of thing? And it was really filling my cup. That's the reality. I loved being able to help people and answer their questions through either learning opportunities or mistakes that I've made, being able to kind of help them start what they needed to do. So that just really kind of became my bread and butter. And I decided, I think that I can do this full time. I think that there's a need out there, and I genuinely believe in the goal of training in the trades. And so I was like, I'm going to take this leap of faith. There was a lot going on in the world around me at the time. And I went to my boss and I said, hey, first of all, everybody in this industry knows absolutely everybody. So I want to be very, man to man to you, if you will, for a moment, and say, this is my goal. This is what I want to do. I want your blessing to do this. And he thought about it for a few minutes. We went into detail on what kind of services that would mean for me and what does that look like. And came back a few days later and he said, I will, consider this the blessing. Like, yes, go do if that's what fills your cup and that's what you need to do in your life. Absolutely. I support you. This is the blessing. Go do it. But it is a conflict of interest. You can't do it while you're still here. You can't do it at the same time. And so that was a very scary realization that I needed to start, stashing away and building the savings account, and to know that when the time came to start, I had to jump in both feet. I had no other choice.
Right. And so that was really full time in October.
Yes. Yeah. So this is probably a different perspective than most of your podcast guests who have been in the industry and owned their business for years. My business is a baby business, but yeah, just started.
So what have you learned in the first 60 days?
Oh my gosh. So many things. I have learned a lot. I think the one big one is just network, which I know that's what I tell everybody. If you're thinking about starting, knowing your network and not being out into it for only your own personal gain. At the end of the day, I'm making social media posts. I'm sharing documents that may not be directly to a service that I provide, but it's still a resource that I think can help them. And don't be selfish. Like, be okay sharing, because at the end of the day, all of us business owners or managers or people working for, the big guy, whatever it is, we're all just trying to figure it out. So just share, just network.
All right. Have you made, and it's pretty quick, but have you made any big mistakes yet?
I, knock on wood, wouldn't say big mistakes. I would definitely say there's been some learning opportunities. I think for me, the thing that I would do over differently is just timing my business. And what I mean by that is, in our industry, it's almost like conference season, if you will. Like, you've got the fall, which is all of the expos, all of the conferences, all of these things. And I opened my business the week after all of those ended.
Yes.
And it was like, wow, I missed so many networking opportunities, so many chances to meet new faces and sit and learn new sessions and all of these things. So that was a learning opportunity that I don't get a do-over again, but I would recommend you if you are considering.
Yeah. Okay. How has your passion played out for the process of training versus the reality of generating grocery money?
Yeah, definitely. So for me, I'm very intentional that, like, I've told everybody, I'm not doing this business to get rich. If that's what happens, 20 years from now, that's amazing. That's a bonus. But at the end of the day, I just need to break even.
Right.
The reality is that I need to provide a roof over my children's head and I need to put food on the table. And that's what matters. So as long as I'm still happy in doing what I'm doing, I've made a really positive ratio of how much business I need, and to also be able to give them undivided attention. I'm not having to take on 50 clients a month and scramble, and then my customers or my clients are suffering. So that's been nice. That's been a lot of pressure kind of lifted off of my shoulders. When my husband and I were talking, he was like, well, we really only need this. And it was like, oh, okay, well, that makes this way less scary. Let's focus on the positives. But I think the passion of training is such a vague word, right? There's so many training organizations out there. And what does that mean? And so for me, it was finding that gap of, you've got all of these resources out here that put out this content, and they're like, here is the library, here's everything you need. And that's kind of where it stops, which absolutely valuable. Like, yes, please continue building that content out. Those libraries are important. But where I found the gap, and especially when I was creating the school years ago, was that here's almost the destinations, if you will, on the map, but there's no map of how to get from destination A to destination B. And so how do you build a strategy to put all of this content together and make it make sense? And these libraries, they're usually not cheap, right? And so you're paying a lot of money for this resource, but are you utilizing it to the fullest? And are you manipulating it to where it's customized and makes sense for your business? And that's what I do. So I'll go in and I'll help these companies and say, okay, hey, this is everything that you have access to. Now let's make it custom, make sense for the way your business operates, and let's build a strategy for it.
All right. What do you wish you knew 60 days ago that would have made the first 60 days easier?
This is going to sound so cliche and so like, duh, like, how did you not know this? But I wish I would have known how hard it is to be patient. And so you kind of have this false hope of like, I'm going to jump in and day 2, I'm going to have the phone's going to be ringing off the hook. I'm going to be great. I'm set for life. And that's just not how it is. And so I have learned that in those times when the phone is quiet or, when you're waiting from client A to client B, using that time to be productive. I could sit there and I could use that time to wallow and be like, well, okay, what do I do now? Like, I don't have a client. What do I do? Or I can sit there and I can say, hey, this is the example that I showed in my demo. Let's build it out even more. Let's listen to more podcasts. Let's read some more books. And so I think I've learned even just in the last 60 days of like, utilize that downtime when you're starting, because one day you're going to have so much work that you don't have that downtime anymore.
Yes, that is very true. That is very true. So now that you're on your own and you're out there, if somebody comes to you and says, hey, I'm thinking about doing my own thing, what advice would you give them?
Definitely identifying if there's a need first, I think is important. And so what I mean by that is, we sit there and we see on TikTok or Instagram, all of these things of like, hey, sign up for my quick e-brochure and I'll tell you how to do a side hustle that takes you 2 minutes a year and then you're a billionaire. It doesn't happen. So I think finding that there's a need for what your product is or your service is important, and not being afraid to just go and ask people and say, hey, this is my idea. What are you thinking? Like, do you feel like this would be beneficial? And just asking who your potential clients and seeing what's out there, but also just truly genuinely believing in the product or the service that you're offering. Because if you half believe it and it's like, well, I'll start it because I need the money. I'm doing this because I feel backed into a corner. I need to do something. It might work out and you might get lucky, but it's, in my opinion, not going to work as much as if you genuinely believed wholeheartedly in what you're offering.
There's 2 ends of the spectrum, right? Some people start a business because they're passionate about it and they just love it and they figure the money will figure itself out. And other people see an opportunity and they're like, I'm going to do this because I can make money. And then they get interested in it and passionate about it, right?
Yeah.
It sounds like you've kind of got yourself in a position where you're passionate about it, but you also see that there's money that can be made there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's a good thing. How much of a business plan have you started with?
That is a great question, my friend. If by business plan you mean trying to figure it out from Monday to Tuesday, then I'm
You're right on there?
Yes, great. I definitely, it sounds kind of dumb and quirky, but I'm a big fan of vision boards and, goal setting. So I've done a lot of that. I've done a lot of like imagery on the wall of like, hey, I'm going to set big goals. And, you hear the phrase, if your dreams don't scare you, they're not big enough. Right.
Yep.
And so, just seeing that image every now and then when I'm in the office and I'm looking, I'm like, okay, I can do that. That was a scary image, but I'm going to chisel away at the iceberg and that helps.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you're 60 days in, you're figuring it out. You're getting closer. I will tell you a majority of the people that I've interviewed. So this is like episode 117 or 118.
Yeah.
They will say you should have savings and you should have a plan. And it would have been great if I had either of those.
Yes.
So it sounds like you're right in the middle of everything.
I'm in perfect. Great.
Yeah, you'll be fine.
Great.
But having said that, if you go back to the night before you opened, what should you have focused? And December Danielle could talk to October Danielle and say, hey, there's going to be a million things you can do tomorrow. Here's the thing you should do first. What's the first thing that you should have done?
I think for me, it was having this library of resources and just knowing which resources made sense where. And so being able to go through and you're getting ready to jump into a very overwhelming day. I didn't have the savings for, a business coach, and I didn't have the savings for all of these amazing things. I didn't have a network of 5,000 people yet. And so I really just had to wake up and say, okay, I jumped in both feet. I don't know what I'm doing, but I believe in my work ethic and I believe in what I have to offer that it's gonna work. It's gonna be fine.
Yep.
If there was a skill that 60 days ago I wish I knew more about, and I still wish that I knew more about, it'd be marketing. When you become a business owner, you put on many, many hats now, and you don't always have the team to go to and say, hey, make me a social media ad about this, or hey, I need a job posting for this. Now you have to do all of it yourself. And it's, especially IT. Oh my goodness, the amount of technology troubles that I had. Luckily for me, my husband's in data analytics and like IT and all of that. So I kind of employed him, but unemployed him.
Yep.
So yeah, those skills that you don't think that you need, or that you know nothing about, start looking at them, because you are absolutely going to need them at some point.
Yeah, I always laugh because, I get people that are like, they've worked at Lilly for their entire career, and they're like, I'm going to start my own business. And I'm like, let's talk about how you buy a stapler.
Yes, I heard that. Yes.
You got to buy your own staplers now. Are you okay with that? Because if you're not.
Yes, you now have to track your mileage and your receipts and every little line item.
Yes, and there's paperwork, and there, what you thought was a TPS report and a waste of time before, now you understand why it's happening.
Absolutely.
So
you get more passionate about it once you live through it. That is for sure.
Yes. So, all right. Well, I think that's all good stuff, and it's all the basics.
Yeah.
So, the good news is America is desperate for tradespeople.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thousands of jobs every day.
And so many companies now are putting such an importance on the impact of training. And that's it fills my heart with joy. That makes me so happy. And so it's like, the reality is, if you have 10 technicians on your team and you do a weekly department meeting, so 1 hour a week, right? And you are just kind of half-heartedly doing those trainings, you're spending, upwards of $13,000 a year just on this 60-minute meeting that, without strategy and without intentional training, like what are you doing? Is your training successful? Because I can tell you, when they're at 6:00 in the morning, everybody's still asleep. And when you sit there and read a PowerPoint and then you never come back to that topic again, I promise you, they didn't learn it. They didn't know it. And so I think more companies are starting to realize that, and more companies are starting to wake up on the importance of training. So there's definitely a need out there, and I believe in what I've got. So I got to be patient.
And I would tell you, you can't wait for the phone to ring.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you can be patient about the outcome, but you got to be pretty proactive about the input.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So,
well, and that's funny. It's so people are always like, okay, well, what's the point of, being a business owner, and like, why do you want to do this? And so I've always had a very strong work ethic. I go back to when I was in my undergrad, we had to complete one internship to graduate. And so I did 7. So I was like, I'm going to see what's out there in the world. I'm going to get the experience. So the work ethic has always really been there for me. But at the end of the day, I don't have the stress or the anxiety of sitting at the end of a table and seeing a blue folder or red folder and saying, okay, we're so sorry, but you don't have a position here anymore. And I've lived through that. And I think that trauma carries with you forever. And so when I get to do it on my own, I get to decide if I'm successful or not. Like, how hard I grind is up to me.
Yes.
So that provides me a lot more sense of calm and I guess ready to push through.
Good. And that's a great place to wrap up, because that's what I think everybody in the end that goes out on their own is, they want to be the one in the big seat. They want to make the decision. They want to control their destiny. And that's awesome.
Absolutely.
So for anybody that wants to learn about you, we'll have information on how to contact Danielle and her business at defaultprofitable.com. If you're listening, there's 3 ways you can help us. You could hit subscribe, you could leave a review, or you could share this episode with somebody. And we appreciate you, Danielle. Thanks for being a guest.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
And until next week, we'll be back with another episode. And stay focused, keep working, stay profitable.